Here's a thought experiment. Imagine creating a story so powerful that millions of people don't just read it, they grow up inside it. Their ethics from there, their friendships from there, their sense of good and evil takes shape there. Now imagine that story outgrows you, not metaphorically, literally. It becomes movies, theme parks, merchandise, tattoos, political arguments, identity markers, internet wars. It becomes something people defend like a homeland and attack like an ideology. That's not fantasy, that's J.K. Rowling. She didn't just write Harry Potter, she built a shared mental universe and then lived long enough to watch it turn against her, protect her, fracture, and refuse to agree on what she even represents. This isn't a story about magic, it's a story about authorship in the internet age. About what happens when a creator becomes a symbol. About how culture decides when it loves you and when it stops listening. Today we're not asking, is Rowling good or bad? We're asking something more interesting. What happens when your work becomes bigger than your right to explain it? Joanne Rowling was born in 1965 in England, in a household that valued stories but didn't particularly expect greatness. She wasn't raised with the mythology of destiny or genius. She was raised with books, imagination, and a sense of being quietly different. She wrote constantly as a child, not because she thought she was special, but because writing was where her thoughts lined up correctly. School didn't feel magical, writing did. She studied French at university, not literature, a practical choice. She imagined herself working internationally, maybe translating, maybe teaching. Writing was still something she did on the side, privately, without ambition attached. Then life inverted, not gently. Her mother developed multiple sclerosis and declined slowly over years. Rowling watched that process up close. The experience carved something permanent into her worldview. Grief wasn't dramatic. It was administrative, exhausting, and unglamorous. Her mother died before Rowling ever saw success. That absence matters. Death is not abstract in Harry Potter. It's structural. After university, Rowling bounced between jobs. Office work, teaching English abroad, none of it stable, none of it fulfilling. She married quickly, divorced painfully, and returned to the UK as a single parent with very little money. This is where the myth usually starts. Cafes, coffee, welfare, a manuscript. What gets lost is the psychological state. Rowling wasn't just poor. She was directionless, grieving, ashamed, and responsible for another human being. That combination either breaks people or hardens them. For her, it narrowed her focus. Rowling published into a cultural moment that doesn't exist anymore. The 1990s were the last pre-algorithm era of mass culture. Stories still traveled slowly. Bookstores mattered. Gatekeepers existed. Fandoms formed offline first. Children's literature, in particular, was underestimated. It was expected to be short, safe, episodic, and disposable. Series weren't trusted unless they were formalic. Rowling did the opposite. She pitched a long, serialized story where children aged, consequences stacked, institutions failed, death stayed permanent. Modern analogy? Imagine releasing a 7-season prestige drama and being told it's for kids. That friction mattered because it forced Rowling to write past expectations instead of into them. Rowling didn't invent fantasy. She didn't invent magic schools. She didn't invent chosen one narratives. What she did was organize them psychologically. The first major innovation was emotional seriousness. Harry Potter never treats childhood as a waiting room for adulthood. Children feel fear, jealousy, resentment, grief, and moral conflict fully. Adults are not reliable authorities. Teachers are flawed, obviously. Governments are incompetent. Heroes make mistakes. This resonated because it mirrored reality more closely than most children's fiction ever had. Gen Z analogy? Harry Potter is what happens when you trust young people with the truth, just structured. The second innovation was world logic. Hogwarts isn't exciting because it's magical. It's exciting because it's bureaucratic. There are rules, exams, punishments, hierarchies, and petty conflicts. Magic is just another system, like school, like government, like family. That familiarity is why the world felt livable rather than spectacular. The third innovation was moral ambiguity. Rowling doesn't write villains who twirl mustaches. Voldemort isn't terrifying because he's evil. He's terrifying because his ideology makes sense to people who fear chaos. What they said? It's a story about good versus evil. What they meant? It's a story about fear turning into policy. That's not accidental. That's political literacy. Let's pause here because this is where things get weird. Rowling didn't just succeed, she over-succeeded. The books didn't fade, they didn't peak, they became infrastructure. Entire generations learned how to read long books, how to care about fictional ethics, how to argue about morality. And when something teaches you who you are, you don't let go easily. That's important because when the author speaks later, it doesn't feel neutral. It feels personal. Starting around 2019 and escalating sharply in 2020, Rowling entered a public debate about sex, gender identity, and transgender rights that transformed how she was perceived globally. Through social media posts and a lengthy personal essay, Rowling argued that sex is a meaningful biological category and that changing its legal or linguistic definition could have consequences for women's rights, especially in contexts like prisons, healthcare, and single-sex spaces. She framed her position as rooted in feminist concerns and personal experience, including her history of domestic abuse and fears around safeguarding. Critics, including many LGBTQ+ activists, trans advocates, and former fans, argued that her framing erased trans identities and reinforced narratives that have historically justified discrimination and harm. They emphasized that trans women are women, that inclusion does not negate women's rights, and that Rowling's platform amplified ideas with real-world consequences. The response was immediate and global. Actors from Harry Potter films publicly distanced themselves from her statements. Fan communities fractured. Hashtags trended for weeks. Boycotts were called. Counter-defenses emerged just as loudly. Rowling responded by refusing to retract her views, publishing clarifications, and continuing to speak publicly. She rejected the label of anti-trans, while critics argued impact mattered more than intent. What made this moment culturally significant wasn't just a disagreement, it was the scale. Rowling stopped being treated as an author with opinions and became a symbol within a larger cultural conflict. Her work was re-evaluated. Her legacy was contested in real time. The debate did not resolve, it entrenched. And from that point forward, discussion of Rowling's books became inseparable from discussion of Rowling herself. Rowling mattered long before controversy, and continues to matter after it. Culturally, she redefined what children's literature could achieve. She proved long-form storytelling could shape values, not just entertain. Historically, she helped revive reading culture at a moment when attention was already fragmenting. Artistically, she demonstrated that popular fiction could still be thematically serious without being elitist. Socially, the controversy surrounding her became a live experiment in how societies negotiate disagreement, harm, intention, and legacy, especially when art intersects with identity. This wasn't just about one author. It was about how modern culture handles disagreement with creators it once loved. Harry Potter still lives everywhere, but differently. In fandom spaces, people reinterpret the text independently of Rowling. In academic spaces, death of the author debates became mainstream. In internet culture, Rowling became shorthand for creator-audience conflict. Her story is cited whenever someone asks, "Can you separate art from artist? Who owns meaning once art goes public?" Does cultural impact override personal intent? She didn't just influence fantasy, she influenced how we argue online. Here's the uncomfortable part for everyone involved. Rowling believed in coherence, in structure, in rules. The internet believes in fluidity, in redefinition, in collective interpretation. Those philosophies collide. What makes this tragic isn't disagreement. Disagreement is normal. What makes it tragic is scale. Rowling never stopped thinking like a novelist, where words are precise, meanings intentional, and arguments linear. The internet doesn't work like that, and once your work belongs to millions, your voice becomes just one more among them. You should care about Rowling because her life illustrates a future most creators are heading toward. A future where success amplifies scrutiny, identity overrides intention, legacy is negotiated publicly, silence is interpreted, speech is permanent. You don't have to agree with her to understand her significance. Her story teaches caution, humility, and awareness, especially in a world where platforms never forget. J.K. Rowling proved something no spell ever could. You can create a world so powerful that even you lose control of what it means. And once that happens, the story isn't just yours anymore.